Good evening, good people. We are so glad that you're here with us tonight. We're going to get started in just a minute. And as folks are getting settled, I want to just take one moment to give some love to our incredible interpretation team. If you can drop emojis, reactions, feel free to show them some love. This is more than checking a demographic box for us. This is about making sure that all of our people, all of us have access to learn from and with one another and build the power of our people. Thank you for making this more possible, interpretation team. I also want to shout out On Point and all of the tech and design crew and every single organization and every single one of you for getting folks on the call tonight. I want to remind you that this is your opportunity to share it out, encourage your people to text mass call to 30403. If you're watching live on Twitter, feel free to repost it. Let's get some folks in the call tonight that you care about so that we can build the power of our people together. Good evening and welcome to our second mass call called Midwest Momentum. We're zooming in on a key part of the region because there's no doubt that our beloveds there have been fueling the fire of our social movements and are critical to our democratic freedom dreams. Later on, we're going to hear from a true working class hero, Congresswoman Cori Bush from the great city of St. Louis. We're so glad that you could join us tonight. If you're watching on Zoom, I want you to please use the chat to say hello, where you're from, if you're repping an organization. And I also want to shout out to our folks that are watching on Twitter and YouTube. Y'all feel free to do the same. We're sending some special love to folks who are watching the recording after tonight's live version. I'm Ashley Woodard Henderson. My homies call me Ash. I'm your hostess with the mostest tonight. This mass call is a space to engage in political education, to hear updates and analysis from the people that we know you can trust on the ground, and to get involved in meaningful actions as we build power in our communities during the 2024 election cycle. Now, before we get grounded, I want to just make one thing clear. When you fight for justice and liberation, there will always be a few haters. The more visible our work is, the more they come after us. And it is certainly upsetting, but we're not going to be surprised if there are some trolls at this event tonight. If you see any hateful messages in the Zoom chat, I want you to just go right back to that chat and put in messages of solidarity and love, other positive messages. We can be disagreeable, we can debate, but we're not going to harm one another with our words tonight. So if you can make that commitment, I need you to just show some love in the chat while you're introducing yourselves. Now, let's get a little deeper into this call and take stock of where we are right now. I want to lift up the incredible name of a working class hero, Jamal Bowman. We took on the biggest of big money in this race, y'all. That is not an exaggeration. Jamal's opponents literally broke the record of how much money was spent in a congressional primary with about $20 million. AIPAC, about $17 million of that $20 million, is now the largest source of Republican donations in Democratic primaries, with the goal of pushing U.S. politics further to the right by targeting candidates of color who fight for working people and are refusing to be quiet about the Israeli government's humanitarian atrocities in Gaza. Y'all been paying attention to the news. Y'all have seen this. They are trying to make it harder for working class people to compete for seats. AIPAC knows their issues are unpopular. Polls show that people in the U.S. want a ceasefire and the conditioning of military aid at the very least. That's why they keep talking about everything except the war. They even talk about abortion rights despite endorsing over 200 anti-abortion extremists. And despite these facts, we made them fight it out to the very end last night. Jamal is a fighter, and we are proud to struggle right alongside him. This attack on this champion of working families and the values and agendas that we were sending him to Congress to fulfill is still painful. But this will not stop us, y'all. It, in fact, strengthens our resolve to fight the right, to build our power, and to win. And on top of all of this, did you know that the New York Working Families Party added 3 working class women of color to the state assembly, a union rep on Long Island, and took out a corporate DA? That At least 9 of the 11 New York lawmakers who faced challenges and were backed by our folks definitely won their primaries last night. This narrative that we who believe in freedom lost last night is a lie from the pits of hell that I don't even believe in. Chin up, beloveds. We certainly have more work to do, but don't let the folks who oppose the building of beloved community and healthy, sustainable, and equitable communities for all people tell our story. We're on our way to victory despite their attacks. We also have our first general election debate happening tomorrow. I hope y'all are going to tune in. That's going to put on full display the stakes of the general election contest that we are going into. But before we go any further, let's do what we do and take a moment to recognize how we're arriving at this call. Let's take a second to ground ourselves. I want to ask you a few questions. How many of you on this call have ever been to a protest march? How many of you have walked on a union picket line? And if you haven't been, no worries. Tell me if you've been inspired by seeing our people putting their very bodies on the line at protest marches or at union picket lines. Let me see you in the chat. Tell me if you've been there with me. Yeah, I see you. I see we've got some marchers here. I want you to take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth and think about what it means to march. It means we've come together, sometimes because of our collective righteous rage that's evoked because of injustice, or because of our contagious collective vision for a better world that we commit to building. We've picked a direction and we are marching, we are moving, we are moving, we are moving together. Take another deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. I want you to think about what it sounds like to hear those bodies moving. Sure, we all know the sound of chants and yelling that goes along with many of our marches, but I want you to think of the movement. Think of the movement. Think of the moments when the chants go quiet for a second. Think of the sound of the shuffling of all those bodies in a shared direction. Maybe you're in a city, and for one quiet moment, you hear the rhythm of our collective movement echoing in the canyon created between the skyscrapers built by the rich and powerful. Or maybe you, like me, were marching in rural communities on gravel roads, and you hear the crunch below you. Wherever you were marching, whenever our collective movement was taking you from one place to a place that we were envisioning, remember that we didn't stop. We didn't back down. We didn't turn around. There may be setbacks along the way, along the route, but our bodies kept moving in a collective direction. I want you to take one last breath with me. Deep in through your nose and out through your mouths. And I want you to think about all the other people on this call tonight. I want you to think about all the goodwill that we have for each and every one of us that is collected to learn from one another tonight. And I want you to think about this question. Can you hear it? Can you feel it? Are you marching with me, with us? And if you're committed to that, I want you to say, I'm committed in the chat. I want you to literally embody the feeling that you feel when we are taking collective action so that we can be open to learning together and hearing from our colleagues tonight. And if you're ready, I think we're ready to do this. So let me remind you what we're going to do here. These mass calls are being hosted by the Working Families Party and highlighting WFP member organizations and leaders from across the country. After tonight, we have more planned, and y'all remember this from the first call. On August 14th, we're going to take stock of where we are right before the Democratic National Convention. On September 18th, we're going to prepare for the final sprint of the general election. On October 16th, we keep fighting our way through and be ready for any October surprises. And then on November 7th, we're going to gather immediately after the election and prepare for whatever is next, because we will certainly have work to do regardless of the results. The fascists are ramping up, so we need to come together. And I know, because you're here tonight, that you are down. Here's what we're going to do tonight. In just a minute, we're going to get into some political education about the converging crises of this moment and our block and build strategy to win in 2024 and beyond it. Then we're going to hear about the great work of Action St. Louis and Seed the Vote. You're going to hear about what folks are doing right now to build a powerful movement for this election cycle. And then finally, we're going to speak with Congresswoman Cori Bush, the Great, about her reelection campaign. Folks, they're voting on August 6th. That's just in a few more weeks, right? So it's our mission. It is mission critical that we show up and show out for Cori Bush right now, right? Jamal was one fight. We've got several other fights to fight as we move forward. So if you haven't already joined us, I want you to take your phone out right now and take a moment to text mass call, MASS space CALL to 30403 so that we can stay connected about what you can do to support our movement. If you want to find out what you can do to support Cori Bush's reelection campaign, I need you to text mass call to 30403. We're gearing up for more elections after Cori's race. So if you haven't done so already, again, I need you to take the second to text mass call to 30403 so that we can get you plugged in. All right, let's get started with some political education. So in today's teaching, we're going to keep talking about our strategy of block and build. So folks that were on last week heard us get a little deeper into block. We're going to dig deeper into understanding the conditions that got us to where we are today. And we're going to talk about what that means for our blocking strategy. Then we're going to preview our build strategy, which we're going to get into deeper on the next call. So if you were with us on the last mass call, you may remember that we talked about the MAGA threat, right? We talked about how MAGA is a distillation of a bunch of historical movements on the right. We also talked about MAGA's rise to power. They now control 23 state legislatures. They control the House of Representatives. They have taken control of one of the major political parties in this country. They have a majority on the Supreme Court. They are openly white supremacists. They are building a white supremacist movement at the very least, and they are willing to use political violence to achieve their ends. And they are now openly boasting about their plans for authoritarian rule if they win in 2024. Again, you don't have to take my word for it. If you want to read about MAGA and what they have planned, I want you to check out a guide to Project 2025 that MediaMatters.org put out about the Heritage Foundation, their guide to Project 2025 and its extreme right-wing agenda for the next Republican administration. You'll be terrified at what the MAGA forces are planning. In our last call, we also talked about needing to hold two ideas at the same time. First, there is a historical precedent for MAGA. And second, MAGA represents something more dangerous than any of those past examples of right-wing reaction. The reason MAGA is more dangerous is that there's a more fundamental breakdown in the existing order that's happening right now. The way the world works is turned on its head in some pretty profound ways. This is happening right here in the United States, and it's happening all over the world. So why is there a breakdown in the existing order of things? Well, here's a way to picture it from the US perspective. Right now, there are a series of crises that are all converging. Y'all know them. There's growing inequality, the changing role of the US in the world, climate change, changing gender norms and the backlash to it, and the racial reckoning and its backlash. There's so many others, but all of these forces are bearing down on us, intersecting and escalating in all kinds of ways. It's creating incredible pressure on the status quo as we've known it. We're seeing signs of breakdown. Folks can debate about whether or not we're on the verge of civil war or if the first one ever ended here in the first place. But what we know for sure is that there is definitely a crisis of legitimacy going on, where people's trust in our institutions is breaking down on a fundamental level. And combine this with the fact that for many, many people, life has gotten harder on a day-to-day level. Groceries are more expensive. They can't afford a home. We're buried in debt. Enter into this mix a demagogue like Donald Trump, who is both creating and riding the wave of this popular resentment. He's filling the visionary leadership gap that exists only in the absence of our presence, our vision, and our sustained work with all of our people, including rural folks, working class white people, faith communities, etc. And you have the conditions that are right for MAGA to be so much more dangerous than its predecessors. So let's break this idea of converging crises down another way. This is an overwhelming moment in history. There's so many world-changing struggles happening all at the same time. Sometimes we can tend to focus on just one in order to feel like we're doing something and to deal with how overwhelming it can look. It can be to look at the whole picture. Or we feel we may need to focus on one thing that is just our lane, our area of expertise, so that we can maximize our impact. But this narrow focus can make it harder for us to have a generative approach to strategic differences in this moment. So now we're going to take a step back and look at the defining struggles of our moment, where they overlap and where they are in tension with one another, so that we can help provide a context for our conversations about strategy. One clear threat is the threat of MAGA and the rise of authoritarianism. When we focus here, we are focusing on facing a threat driven by a Republican Party that has been taken over by the MAGA movement. We can think of this as a layer of the converging crises that we're dealing with. Another layer is the genocide of Palestinian people in Gaza by the Israeli government, who are using weapons provided by the United States. When we focus here, we're generally focused on the decisions of the Democratic Party's Biden administration that is continuing to provide weapons to Israel instead of exercising its power to stop the genocide. We can look at these as separate struggles and ask each other, which side are you on? Or we can look at them as intersecting struggles and ask ourselves, how can we address both of these at once, knowing that they tend to focus us on different opponents and on different tactics? We think this second approach is the more effective one. These are both world historic crises that all of us are called to respond to and responsible to respond to. But this requires us to deal with differences in a generative way. And there's a third layer that we want to put into this mix. Increasing numbers of working class people are moving away from the Democratic Party. Some of those folks are turning to the right. This has historically mainly been white, poor, and working class people. But it is a trend that is increasingly drawing working class people across race and region. It is our duty to address these first two crises, the threat of authoritarianism and the genocide of the Palestinian people, in a way that addresses this and pulls towards the right among poor and working class people. The Democrats aren't going to do this for us, y'all. Otherwise, even if we win this hard battle, we're going to lose the war. So before we go any further, let's take a moment to breathe, because this is enormous. It's hard to face all these things at once, and we know it's not even everything that has to be faced. Let's invite in some acceptance that we can't do all of this perfectly because, we're humans. We all have differences. We will make mistakes. No one individual or organization can fully hold all of this at once. And then let's take a next faithful step together by asking and answering some questions. How are we going to be intentional about what we are responsible for in this moment? And how are we going to be generous with ourselves and with each other? We need to make some hard choices. We can't be all things individually. That's why the collective hard work of strategy is so important. If we want to approach this situation as strategists, it feels important to ask ourselves even more questions like, what are the implications if we ignore any one layer of the picture? What are the tensions represented here? And so that we can learn from what is working, what are examples of ways that we are taking on the intersection of these crises in our work today? Take a breath. Think about these questions. Feel free to put your answers in the chat. What are the implications if we ignore any one layer on this picture? What are the tensions represented here? And what are examples of ways we are taking on the intersection of these crises in our work today. So, we are in an era of converging crises. We are in a situation where the MAGA Republicans are creating a storm that is threatening to overwhelm everything and all of us, the work we do, and the people we love. At the heart of the matter, they are aggressively making meaning of events on the ground and telling a story of what the problem is and who is to blame. And they are doing so in the face of an establishment Democratic Party that has lost the trust of many voters, especially working class voters, many of us who are on this call tonight. And this is what that looks like in the polls for this election. In a New York Times Siena poll, they found that across every demographic, more voters thought that Trump's policies had done more to help them than Joe Biden's. This might be hard for you to believe. You might say, but wait, Ash, the only legislation that Trump passed was tax cuts for the rich. So what policies are we even talking about? And how do people see that as benefiting them? Well, I would answer, let's not ignore a cardinal rule of how this stuff works. Politics is perception. And right now, because of the condition in many people's lives, many of our lives, the converging crises and the storm being created by MAGA, more people are still perceiving Trump as something other than what he is. So here's a way to visualize what's going on here. Here we have a picture of how most people think of politics in the United States, that there's a blue team and there's a red team. Trump and the MAGA faction that's risen into leadership of the Republican Party is the red team. They are continuing to grow in power to the point where they have almost completely consolidated their power inside of the Republican Party. Even the conservative leaders of yesteryear have all too often been forced to bend to their will. And in doing so, they're creating a new force on this political map. This new power is exerting force of attraction on working class voters. It is leading to a political realignment where working class people, increasingly of all races, are being pulled towards the Republican Party. So this is another part of what we have to block, y'all. The question is, how do we block it? First, we need to claim the victories that we've had over the last 4 years. These victories were not solely Joe Biden's or the Democratic Party's victories. They were ours. We all saw that we played a role in pushing BBB, right? Y'all know BBB, Biden to be better, right? We aren't echoing the right, and we can't just echo the Democrats either. We have to have an independent line because our people want an end to the two-party system and desire deeper and truer solutions for our folks. We should claim the victories we forced the Democrats to make. We should ring the alarm about fascism and authoritarianism. And we should amplify the imperative to cast a bigger vision forward that's about our ability to build a viable, independent political party. We aren't seeking to maintain the status quo here or to be in the same situation we're in now come 2028. We also need to remind voters of who Trump really is. People are starting to pay attention now. They're starting to clock what it might mean to elect a convicted felon to office, while many of our formerly incarcerated loved ones still can't vote. And even more are still behind bars on Trump's failed promises of second chances. They are starting to see that Trump is openly selling favors like a pair of sneakers to billionaires and oil company executives in exchange for a second term. They are starting to see what is really going on here, and we have to not let up on making that clear. And finally, and most importantly, we have to spark in our people a sense that we can do this. Hope is a discipline. The horse race reporting on TV and the polls are garbage, y'all. They are designed with an explicit purpose to demoralize and to distract us. We need to instill in our people a sense that we can do this, and even more, that we will do this. Can you come to the chat and tell me that you are committed to getting this work done? I want you to show me some emojis. I want you to drop some comments that you are committed in the chat right now. Tell me you're committed. Tell me you're going to be a part of the movement force that makes sure that our people not only have hope, but that believe that our movement is actually going to make their conditions different. I see you. I see you. Let's do this. I'm in. Okay, let's go. So that's as far as we're going to be able to go today because of time. But on our next call, we're going to start to dig into what we mean by build, which I know many of you are thinking about, racking your brain about, really building your organizations to really fight for. So we're going to talk about what we mean by build and the strategy of block and build. We're going to get specific about what exactly we are building right now in the primaries and all the way through the general election in November and beyond it. And we're going to talk about some of the errors that we could make along the way if we decide to block without building or build without blocking. So we still have some necessary political education material to cover. I want you to stay tuned for the next mass call so that we can dig into it together. Now, we want to hear from you as we use this technology that we've got. We've got a couple of questions for you, and we're going to use Mentimeter to ask them. So you can either go to www.menti.com and enter the code 57510845, or you can scan the code that's on your screen right now. Okay, so you can either go to www.menti.com, or you can enter the code, where you can enter the code 57510845, or you can scan the QR code that is on your screen right now. I see you all coming in. We'll give it another second. I'll give the instructions one more time for you. You can go to www.menti.com and you can enter the code 57510845, or you can scan the QR code that you see on your screen. All right, y'all, keep coming in and we'll get into these questions. So the first question: what crises in your community are driving you to block the right and build independent political power? We're going to give you a second to put your answers in the box. What crises in your community are driving you to block the right and build independent political power? As they come in, I'm going to read some of them to you. So yes, trans people are under attack. We're seeing housing, affordable housing. Housing is coming up for a lot of people. The right to stay in their homes with dignity, environmental racism. We're trying to beat back settler colonialism and cis heteropatriarchy. We're trying to fight for migrant justice because of the high cost of housing and healthcare, the climate change crises, education, the attack on education, and we should have affordable college. It should be free, in my opinion. We're seeing financial crises, fiscal crises, the carceral system, the attack on reproductive rights. Absolutely. We're seeing the right-wing takeover of school boards on the local level, theocratic encroachment on our government by Christian nationalists, and other religious extremists. Yes, because government budgets are cruel, racist, misogynist, and anti-children, right? Budgets are moral documents. We should be controlling them, right? We got to seriously fight climate change. That's exactly right, comrade. We got to stop the genocide, all of them, but definitely the one in Gaza. Absolutely. We got to beat back the new Jim Crow. Absolutely. Y'all keep going. We're going to move to the next question. Who are the people that you're carrying with you? Like, who are the folks whose conditions you hope to see be better while you do this work of block and build? Who are your people? Who do you love? Who are you fighting for? Who are you fighting with? We'll give you a second to start populating your answers. Who's your base? Who's your community? My single mom, the Muslims and people of color in my community, my neighbors, absolutely. Young parents, queer folks, workers, absolutely, keep it coming. Working people, our children and grandchildren, 7 generations forward, right? Caregivers, all marginalized peoples, women, houseless people, Black people, especially the non-elites. I hear you and I feel that. Sick and disabled people, children, anyone who believes in human rights for all of us, our elders, everyone who is not the 1%. residents in our cities, Black folks, immigrants, incarcerated folks, Indigenous people, renters, brown folks, Indigenous folks. Absolutely. For other activists, yes, people who are chronically ill, refugees, asylum seekers, all of the LGBTQIA plus community, people who have been impacted, devastated by climate change all over the world, all oppressed people everywhere, seekers of justice, Latine folks. Absolutely. Y'all keep it coming. Low income people, Jewish folks, all life, plants, non-human friends, Mama Earth, the land. Yes. People with invisible disabilities, people with mental illness and trauma survivors, mothers everywhere. Absolutely, y'all. Y'all keep it coming. Let's move to the next question. I saw anti-war protesters, and I would say all of our political prisoners as well. Let's go to our next question. Has your thinking changed at all about how we do this based on what you've learned today through the teaching? I would add, if you've learned things from the last teaching as well. Has your thinking changed? Has it sharpened? Have you had any new ideas? What's coming up for you? Not really. It's just reinforcing the way I already think. I see you, comrade. Way to be on the right side of history. What's happening to your thinking? What are you learning about block and build through your work? All right. I see folks are sticking with showing up for racial justice. It's very affirming. Yes, to more being open to strategic and practical endorsements to gain power, more actions to gain power. It's all about building our power. Blocking the right isn't enough. We have to build power for ourselves. Absolutely. Concern about Project 2025 and naked fascism. No future elections with Trump. Sharpening the way that we put things together and how we do it. We need to all stand together for everyone. Strategy over purity. Folks are even more scared. Hell yeah, me too. We need to talk to folks we might not have talked to about politics. We got to work together. We got to be unified. We've got to create more equality and equity in our communities. You know, some of us are still dreaming about a better candidate than Biden. We have to talk to voters that the other side isn't talking to. I see folks affirming that WFP is their political home. I see folks talking about the danger of history repeating itself. Folks are thinking about converging crises, about how we can engage with all of the folks that we need to talk to, including Trump supporters and maybe trying to change some of their minds, focusing on positive information instead of getting stuck in the mud with MAGA, pushing back against disinformation, reaching out to everyone, that it's so much bigger than any one of us, right? Absolutely. All right, y'all. There's so much more that we can get into, but for the sake of time, I got to move us. And I want to remind you that before we get into our convo with our special guest, we have to make sure that you don't miss out on the future mass calls and ways that you can take action. So I need you to, again, take your phone out, text mass call, MASS space CALL, mass call, 2 words, to 30403. And I want you to spread the word about the upcoming calls. It's still time. People can come on right now. You can watch on YouTube. You can watch on Twitter. You can make sure that they get registered so they get the recording and they can come to the future calls. So if you want to help us grow our movement, we need you to text that. In 2020, we had 5,000 people on our largest call. I said 5,000 people got on our call in 2020, y'all. And we're taking advantage of being able to start even earlier this year. So if you think these calls are useful and you want to keep growing our movement, I need you to text mass call, 2 words, to 30403 so that you can help spread the word. And with that, comrades, I have the esteemed honor to bring to the forefront a couple of grassroots leaders who are organizing to make our block and build strategy real on the ground every day. I first want to welcome Emily Lee and thank her for joining us. Emily is the executive director of Seed the Vote, which is mobilizing thousands of volunteers and activists to defeat Trump and build the movement long term. Previously, y'all might know her because she spent 10 years at the Chinese Progressive Association, who we love, gang, gang, and was formerly co-director of San Francisco Rising, a multiracial grassroots coalition of community organizations focused on building political power for BIPOC and low-income communities. And secondly, I have the esteemed and blessed privilege of introducing to some and just reuniting with others the incredible Kayla Reed, who is an organizer and strategist from St. Louis, Missouri. She's the co-founder and executive director of Action St. Louis, a grassroots racial justice organization that was founded after the 2014 Ferguson uprising that works to build Black political power. Kayla has also been one of my fam and comrades who was strategizing in the movement for Black Lives, where she co-founded the Electoral Justice Project, which we lovingly call EJP, that seeks to challenge electoral injustice, expand and mobilize the Black electorate, and strengthen the capacity of Black-led organizations that are building power all across the United States. Thank you both for being here. I'm going to ask you both to reflect on the strategy of Block and Build and to share what's coming up for you from your perspective of doing the work on the ground, about the challenges you're facing and what's working for you. But Emily, let's start with you. Can you tell us a bit about the work that Seed the Vote is doing and how you see it as a part of a Block and Build strategy?
Yes, thank you, Ash. I'm really excited to be on this panel today with Kayla and with you. Just a little bit about Seed the Vote. For those who don't know, we are an electoral organization that helps win elections by sending volunteers to door knock in battleground races. We place volunteers with local social justice organizations or labor unions that are working year-round in working class communities and communities of color with the goal of building long-term political power, because we know elections are important and they're also not enough. So if you want to come roll with us this year, but you can't afford to travel to another state to come door knock for Cori Bush or during the general election, Seed the Vote provides financial support for volunteers by covering plane tickets, rental cars, hotel rooms. We will help get you there if you are down to come door knock and defeat fascism and fight for our champions. So check us out at www.seedthevote.org. And this year, we're working with a bunch of amazing social movement organizations to implement Block and Build strategy. So for us, what Block and Build means is that Block, we are defeating MAGA candidates. We're defeating Trump. And it's a space where, like folks said, we're often needing to support centrist Democrats instead of the alternative. Build is where we're supporting our progressive champions, and we are defending people who are with us on the issues, who are really challenging systemic injustice at all levels. And Build also means we're supporting this local-based power building organizations who are there day in and day out, before elections, after elections. They're the ones who are going to be there to continue to build and organize our people. So this year in 2024, for the primaries, it's critical we are defending and building the progressive wing of Congress by defending our ceasefire champions in the squad. We've talked a lot about the closest races this year. And, so we decided to focus on turning out volunteers to support Representative Summer Lee, Jamal Bowman, and Cori Bush. Obviously, folks know Summer Lee was one of the, first leaders on ceasefire in Congress. And her race happened in April and was, hard fought and won. And Seed the Vote was able to knock 11,000 doors in Pittsburgh and work with our local partners in PA United and the Asian Pacific Islander Political Alliance, who are building power locally with champions like Summer. We know that Bowman's loss last night was really deeply felt by our volunteers and communities across the country. I'm in a WhatsApp group with our volunteers, and their reaction was, hey, let's not give in to pessimism. Let's be even more determined to fight harder for Cori Bush. Let's go even harder for Cori. Let's go to St. Louis. Let's roll with Action St. Louis. And this loss is going to fuel the fire for a win in St. Louis coming up real soon. And so just really quickly, we're deciding to support and defend champions like Cori because since her historic election to Congress in 2021, she's been a bold, compassionate, purposeful leader for Missouri's 1st congressional district. She brought over $2 billion back to St. Louis, and she's been a leading voice in Congress on the issues that matter to us, right? Demanding justice from St. Louis to Gaza. At the height of the pandemic, she led a massive direct action on the steps of the Capitol to stop tenants from getting kicked out of their homes, which resulted in a federal eviction moratorium. Her campaign is powered by small grassroots donors and support from everyday people like us, not right-wing super PACs or billionaire donors who are deeply disconnected from St. Louis. So for us, we want you to come roll with us, come door knock for Corey, come meet us in St. Louis from July 2nd to August 6th. Again, go to our website, seedthevote.org, to come sign up and get help. If you don't know how to get there, if you don't know what days you can go, or how you're going to get there, we can help you. And I just want to share a little bit about the other, portion of this on blocking. It really is kind of fighting the Christian nationalist agenda that you mentioned earlier, Ash. The Republican Party has been captured by MAGA, and there's trifectas held by MAGA in 22 states, right? So what we're going to do this year in November is also to block MAGA from seizing federal power and beat back the MAGA coalition, which is racist, which is anti-immigrant, which is xenophobic, and we are going to be building our progressive movement in that process. So I just want to share a real quick story about why we think canvassing is so important this year. This is a story from Georgia in 2020. Many people know about the Georgia runoffs for control of the Senate. We had a volunteer named Casey who knocked the door of an older voter who had never voted before. She'd been registered Democrat for decades and had never voted, not even against Trump in 2020. Casey talked to her, listened to her deeply, made a connection with her personally, and really talked to her about, why is this election so important? Why does she matter? Why does her opinion matter? Why does her voice matter? And, she said, you know what, you've convinced me, Casey. I do want to go vote actually, but I'm watching my grandkids. I can't leave right now. Casey said, you know what? Don't worry. I got you. Let's all go into the car. All of us are going to head over to the polls right now. And that voter voted for the first time in decades. And in 2022, Casey came back again for another Georgia runoff, had that woman's cell phone number in her phone still, texted her and said, hey, I'm back in Georgia. How you doing? The woman remembered her and said, Casey, I talk about you all the time. And ever since that election, I have voted in every single election since you spoke to me. And you're the reason why I vote now. And this is the type of change we're making by talking to people face to face, person to person across the country. And this is how we build our movement, right? And so this is the build part too. It's not just about supporting electeds, it's about supporting our people to go out there and exercise their political power. Thanks so much, Ash.
Give it up for Emily and the Seed the Vote team in the chat. Show some love in the emojis. Now I get to, talk to illustrious folks called her a hometown hero, Kayla Reed. Let's turn to you. In a few minutes, we're going to hear from Congresswoman Cori Bush. Can you give us some context on how we got here from the uprisings in Ferguson to the moment where you elected Representative Bush to Congress? And now to the work of defending the Congresswoman. How do you see what you're doing as a part of a block and build strategy?
Yeah, thanks, Ash. And thanks so much for everyone who took the time this Wednesday evening to join us on this call. Emily said a lot of what I was going to say, but the Congresswoman record speaks for herself. It speaks for itself. Again, my name is Kayla Reed. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the executive director of Action St. Louis Power Project. We are a grassroots organization committed to building Black political power here in St. Louis. We are a proud organization inside of the Movement for Black Lives ecosystem, and I am a very proud dues-paying member of the Working Families Party. And just as more context, I live in Missouri, and so the block and build strategy is very relevant to my everyday life because I live in the district of Cori Bush and in the state of Josh Hawley. And so at all times, I am very clear on the spectrum of politics that this country is navigating and what's at stake. And I am super clear that we need to build a reality where more people like Congresswoman Bush are in office and less people like Josh Hawley are in office. And so we have to make that a reality through organizing. And I just want to say that 10 years ago, I wasn't an organizer, right? I was a pharmacy technician and I didn't know Cori Bush 10 years ago today. But now I know that she was a nurse and a mother and a pastor, and we lived in the same city and we met on the streets of Ferguson after Mike Brown was killed. When we met, I don't think either of us knew that one of us would go on to be a congressperson in the US House, and one of us would lead an institution committed to building Black political power. But what we were committed to was justice for Mike Brown and justice for Black people at a time where we were seeing continued murders across the country. In our organizations, in our movements, both locally and nationally, I think we're seeking to answer a question. What does it look like to build governing power and practice a style of co-governance with elected officials that can change the material conditions of our communities? Since Cori Bush has been elected, she has tried to live up to that mandate, from fighting for reparations on a federal level, to introducing the People's Response Act, to fighting against the eviction moratorium ending, to ensuring billions of dollars make it back to St. Louis City and St. Louis County. She has been a champion. And when you are vocal in the face of injustice, there will be opposition. History has told us this time and time again. And whether that is those who are seeking housing or those who are seeking a ceasefire, Cori has been just a vocal and honest, bold voice in Congress. She is the voice of a generation. She is a voice of our movement. And she is true to the belief that we need to break these chains. And she does that through policy. She does that through activism. She does that through real footwork in our community here in St. Louis and in the halls of Congress. So we're seeking to answer this question: how do we build political power? And Cori is a manifestation of that work. And so she decided to run for office in a city where we had a 50-year family, a political dynasty that had never been adequately challenged. Cori said, I'm going to run. In the face of a loss, she said, I'm going to run again. And the voters stood with her and elected her to Congress in 2020. And 3 days into her tenure as the congresswoman, the first Black congresswoman from the state of Missouri, the insurrection happened. You know what my congresswoman said? You know what our congresswoman said? I'm banging to the end. And she means that in the sense that when there's a direct threat to people, to marginalized voices, she is going to fight. She is going to fight for us every way that she knows how. And people, the powers that be, those with resources, want to see her removed. They want someone complacent. They want someone controllable. They want someone who will move on their issues and not challenge their authority. That is not Cori Bush. And that is why AIPAC and right-wing conservatives are committed to spending millions in St. Louis to defeat her. But what I know as an organizer now, what Cori knows as an elected official now, is that money can never be an organized people. And so we have to be organized. And so we are going to do everything in our power. We are going to fight to the very end, till the polls close on August 6th, to ensure that Congresswoman Cori Bush is reelected. We have a coalition of organizations: racial justice, economic justice, reproductive justice, labor unions, faith institutions, old, young, Black, white, all ages, all creeds, who are coming together on a daily basis to ensure that we are talking to voters, to ensure that they know the truth of her record, the truth of her values, and the truth that we need to send her back to Congress. She is accountable to the working people of St. Louis. She is an ally to movements for justice. She is a comrade in the struggle for liberation. She is a champion. And as history shows, our champions will be under attack, but when people are organized, we can and we will win. So on August 6th, 3 days before the 10-year remembrance of the killing of Mike Brown and the spark of the Ferguson Uprising and the movement for Black lives, we are going to reelect our champion. We are going to defeat AIPAC. We are going to defeat conservative billionaires who think they can buy our democracy. Her opponent may be bought, but St. Louis is not for sale. So we ask every single person on this call and every single person within your reach, it's time to show up. It's time to show up for St. Louis. It's time to defend our champions, and it's time to win. Come help us knock doors, make calls, send texts, do what you can. Donate to the organizations that are doing the work. This is an all hands on deck moment, and I believe the people will win. Thank you, Ash.
My homie said money can never beat an organized people. Y'all better get into it. Y'all too quiet in the chat, man. Because that was a whole word Kayla Reed just dropped, both about who our Congresswoman is and about the power of St. Louis, the power of the Midwest, the power of Missouri. Y'all should be inspired. Y'all should be ready to fight. So I need you to show some love to Kayla Reed. I need you to show some love to Emily Lee right now in the chat. Give it up one time. Thank you, Kayla. Thank you, Emily. Y'all, we could have spent so much more time learning from the work that both of them are doing, the life-saving, mission-critical work that they're doing. Huge respect to you both. But now we've got to switch gears. Before I bring up our special guests, I want to take us back to what we've already committed to. Hopefully, this conversation that you just heard between me and Emily and Kayla has inspired you to actually be even sharper, right? Be even sharper about what you're going to do. So I want to ask you a question. Now that you've heard from our panelists tonight, I want you to holler back at me about your volunteer goals. So we're going to drop a poll in the Zoom. Sorry for our friends on Twitter and YouTube and people that are watching the recording. You all can feel free to let us know by telling us in the chats and on Twitter, tweeting about what your commitments are. But we want you to tell us what your volunteer goals are for 2024, right? It's more than just getting on these calls. Learning together is important, but education for education's sake might make smarter people, but might not a world save, right? So let's get sharper. I want you to tell me if you're door knocking. I want you to tell me if you're phone banking. I want you to tell me if you're committed to sending a WFP selfie postcard with the Reach app. You could be on the lookout for follow-up links about that if you've texted mass call to 30403 and want to know how that works. I want to know if you're doing relational work with your friends, your family, your neighbors. I want to know if you're dropping some coin on the Cori Bush campaign, if you're making a donation, right? And if we've missed something, I want you to put your commitment in the chat. Right? So take a second, check out the poll on Zoom. Are you door knocking? You can pick more than one. I'd love for you to do more than one. Are you door knocking? Are you phone banking? Are you sending a postcard, a WFP postcard? Are you doing the relational work with your friends and family? Are you donating? I saw some folks in the chat be like, dang, Kayla said she's a dues paying member of WFP. I am too. Some people didn't know you could do that. So you could go to the WFP website and join the party right now. We could build the political party of our dreams today, right? If we miss something else, put your commitment in the chat. Take just another couple of seconds to tell us what your volunteer goals are for 2024. Are you door knocking? Are you phone banking? Are you sending a selfie? Are you doing relational work with your friends, your family, your neighbors, your faith community, the home, whoever? Are you making donations to working family party candidates? And if we miss something again, you can put your commitment in the chat. I'm going to give you another few seconds to get in here. Keep it coming. Keep it coming. Fill it out. We've got about 50% of your responses. I'm going to give it another 10 seconds just to see if we can get a couple more folks. And then we're going to close the poll for tonight. Are you donating? Are you door knocking? Are you phone banking? Are you selfieing and sending the postcards through the Reach app? Are you doing relational work? Are you joining the Working Families Party? Tell me what you're up to. All right, I see folks in the chat loving it. You're marketing, you're selling the message. Folks are making commitments to donate to Cori Bush. Let's go. All right. Folks are checking all the boxes. Folks are texting, phone banking. Folks are organizing in their own precincts. I see you, Texas. Let's get it. All right. Folks are talking to people. This is beautiful. All right. So we're going to close the poll for tonight. Oh, we got to sign up for Seed the Vote, Emily. Beautiful. Folks are talking about all the ways that they're going to support. All right, we got 46% of the participants are door knocking. We got a whole lot more folks that are phone banking. Folks are making commitments to the postcards, about 27%. The relational work with our friends and family, 64% of folks said they're doing that. 66% of people said that they're going to make a donation. And then 13% said they're doing even more than that. Shout out to each and every one of you who are actually making embodied commitments to show up and show out for the purpose of building people's power in 2024. We see you and we appreciate you. Before we transition to our special guest, I want to call all of you to take action with us. It's not enough for us to sit back and leave all the work to these incredibly powerful leaders, Emily and Kayla, that we just heard from. We need you in this fight too. So if you've committed and you're ready to throw down with us, I need you to text mass call to 30403. Again, that is mass call, 2 words, MASS space CALL to 30403. Now, it is my extreme pleasure to pass it over to a nationally recognized social movement strategist, a visionary leader in the movement for Black lives, and a community organizer for racial, social, and economic justice. One of the most wonderful New Yorkers I've ever known. You know him as the national director of the Working Families Party, my comrade, and someone I consider one of my dearest friends, Maurice Mitchell.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Ash. And I remember close to a decade ago, us connecting, and eventually in the early days of the movement for Black Lives, us doing something similar to this, but it was with, less of a polished technology. We were basically on the phone doing like a conference call. And I just want to appreciate the way that ever since I've met you, you've been able to minister to our hearts and our heart's desire for the future that has not yet been told, our strategic minds, and you've given us assignments for our bodies so we could be in motion inside of a strategy for our liberation. So I thank you so much, comrade. Also, I want to give a shout out to Emily. I want to give a shout out to Kayla, who I met in a church in Ferguson, Missouri, close to a decade ago. And listen, if Kayla Reed tells me that this is the plan, I am with her. What she's building in St. Louis is inspirational. What Emily is building, the infrastructure for folks to be in motion in a strategy and to use electoral strategy in a way that aligns with our values, has inspired me. Y'all support Seed the Vote, support Action St. Louis. People are moving in ways that are transformative, building the world that we deserve. So I just want to shout out you. I want to shout out Emily. I want to shout out Kayla. And I have this honor, the honor to be here because my honor is to shout out our special guest. She has been a champion for the people. I was able to connect with her just a few days ago in St. Louis, and she brought down that house. She's not like the other members of Congress, right? She's not like the other members of Congress, and that's a good thing, right? She's a healer, and she's using her office. And she's also a minister, so she's using her office as a venue for healing and ministry. In all the ways that healing and ministry are about bringing people together, are about healing the body politic, right? She has led in and taken bold stance, especially about genocide in Gaza. She is on the receiving end of big money attacks from organizations like AIPAC. And don't get it twisted. Because this healing and because of this ministry is coming from the body of a Black woman, a working class Black woman from St. Louis, there are people in power that are outraged. And all of that money and spending is designed because she is a symbol of the politics of the future. But make no mistake, those politics are now becoming a reality and there's no stopping it. And who am I talking to about? I am talking about the guest of honor. It is a pleasure to introduce Congresswoman Cori Bush to the call. Welcome, Congresswoman. Welcome, my sister.
Thank you.
To the call.
Yes, thank you. Oh, wow. First of all, let me just say how dope y'all are, first of all, because today is June 26th and we're on a call getting ready for the next race. And I am just so I don't even have the words really to express how I feel in this moment because I'm not alone. I'm not only am I not alone, I'm not alone, and I have all of you all right next to me, folks on each side of me, people in back of me, people in front of me, everybody in their place, just totally just surrounding me, not only me, but me and my team, surrounding us, as we prepare for what we're about to this journey through August the 6th. But you all, like, it's y'all, so it's Mo, and how you took me in, several years ago, and just it was just like your sister from day one. You didn't have to get to know me and let me, have some phone calls with you, let me take you to lunch, and we have to go through all of these things to make sure that my spirit checks with yours, to make sure that I can trust, the movement in you, and all of that. It wasn't any of that. It was just like, I got you, like, let's do this work. And so thank you for that. And I'm so glad to be able to work with folks like Seed the Vote. So Emily, thank you for what you all bring to the table for all across the country, because that is an infrastructure that is so needed. And people are always saying, how can I help? And then when we say how they can help, sometimes they're like, well, how can I do that? Or we don't have the resources to be able to do that. But then there is a group of folks that came up with an idea that we can let us help with that. And so I'm so proud and honored to be able to be on this call with you all, and I'm just so happy that you all are around at the same time I am. So thank
Mm,
you, See the
mm.
Vote.
So, so,
And
so
huh?
I know you're out there campaigning, so I wanna be precious with your time. We got
Yes,
3 questions for you. All
sure.
right. So for those that aren't from St. Louis, and for those that weren't in the trenches with you as a frontline activist and may not
Mhm.
know your story, would you remind everyone how you got your start and what propelled you to take your activism to Congress?
Oh, sure. So um prior to August 9th, 2014, the day when Michael Brown was killed by Darren Wilson, a then Ferguson police officer. Um, I was working as a nurse, single parent, pastoring, had my own church, just living my life as just trying to do what I thought was how I could not only show up for my family, but show up for my community and leave a legacy. But I was going through so many of the things. I had been unhoused and lived in my car with my 2 babies, for a few months, just hoping that I didn't close my eyes long enough, and that one of them, I would turn and see one of them had, died in the night, because it got too cold. I lived low wage, underinsured or uninsured, just all the things, going for days without eating, but making sure my kids ate, just understanding all of those things. I've, suffered domestic abuse and sexual abuse and police brutality. So many of the things that my community has gone through. But when Michael Brown was killed, I decided to take that to the streets. I didn't know what I was going to do and how I would find. I didn't know my place, but I just put my body on the line. I just showed up, and during that course of time, I met so many of you. Of course, I met Kayla Reed out there. Not only did we meet, but we were on the ground together. More than 400 days we protested. But the thing is this, it wasn't just that we were out there for 400 days. We were out there for 400 days. And let me tell you, out of 400, I may have missed 5 or 6. Um, you know, so every day being a part of some type of action, every day leading actions, every day mobilizing and building, every day trying to do our work to make sure that we were saving lives. Um, and I was asked to run for this seat. I was asked to run for the U.S. Senate. After being pushed, I finally said yes, because my idea was how, like, how do I save my son's life? My son was 14 at the time. How do I make sure that he is not the next hashtag? And if he is the next hashtag, and I did not step in and say yes, to run for office to help make change in that way, would I then look back and say, oh, could you have done more? Is it your insecurity? Is it your, feeling inferior, um, or inadequate? So I ran. I lost the first race, but I got right back up. I lost the first race, and 4 weeks later, I was violently sexual assaulted.
Mm.
But after 3 months, I got my mind back together and I got back out there and I ran again and I ran for this seat. I didn't win that first time, but I got back up and I ran again because it was more about the people, it was about the mission and not about my comfortability. It was about the people and not about my feelings. And so now we are here, and I didn't do it by myself. I did it with so many of the folks on this call.
Mm, Thank you so much for sharing that story. And people in the chat also, like, this is call and response. If you're moved by that story, if you could relate to that story, then share your testimony as well in the chat. So, Sister Corey, as an elected official, you've made a choice to stand with the people, even if that position was not always popular in the halls of power. Now you have a tough re-election campaign on your hands, and I would like you to tell us what you think becomes possible if and when you win.
Yeah, so, you know, in my district, some of the things that I've been able to do already, people didn't think was possible. Let me start there because, like Kayla said, like my dear Kayla Reed said, I love Kayla, I love you so much. um, like Kayla said, this 50-year family dynasty, they had the community sewn up as far as this is what a Congress member does. So people just had an idea of this is pretty much what they can do. Well, we came in and out there on those steps, for those 4 nights and 5 days, we showed, that we can push against the administration, and not in a way to hurt the administration, but in the way to make sure that my community and the people that are most marginalized, that were having a need, that they were prioritized, and the administration saw that and moved. But so that's what we bring to the table. So moving forward, let me just say the ceasefire now resolution we have would not be a ceasefire now resolution had it not been for those of us who stood up to make that decision before October 16th. So it would not be, let me just say, if there was a handful of us, if we were not in Congress, there would never have been a resolution. Still today, there would not probably be a ceasefire now resolution. So let's be
Right.
clear on that.
That's right.
And so moving forward, what you get is somebody who, first of all, I was radicalized during Ferguson. I was radicalized again when I was brutalized by the police. I was radicalized again on the day of the insurrection on January the 6th. This right here, what they think that they're doing, they think that they're about to make me go crawl up under a rug. They think they're about to push me in a corner and make me afraid, but they don't know me. Because I tell you what, they didn't kill me during Ferguson. All
Right.
those bullets that came my way, they didn't kill me. And because they didn't kill me, they radicalized me.
That's
and so
right.
what this is doing is it's radicalizing me even the more. So what you get is this Corey that is even stronger, this
That's
Corey
right.
that is even more powerful, this Corey that is even more emboldened to stand up for those who have the greatest need, this Corey who does not care about her name and reputation. I care about the people getting what they need, and that has to come first. So what you get is me pushing legislation that other folks not willing to talk about. What you get is me fighting for the people who need us the most in ways that other people wouldn't even think of. But as I do it, I'm going to bring people along. So the people that say I can't, I'm going to be in their faces, making sure that they understand, oh, we can do this because I got y'all with me.
That's right. That's right. And man, remember when I said that she is ministering? She is ministering, using her office as a place of ministering to the possibilities, the radical possibilities of our people. And you just saw it right there. So the last question we have, and then you could go back to the campaign trail, back to your family, back to the warm embrace of your community. Why should everyone on this call, and I think we heard it, across the country be concerned about what is happening in your race, District 1 in St. Louis? Why should they be concerned if they don't live in St. Louis? Because there's folks from all over the country on this call. What does this mean to them?
So if we look at, let's just go back to my very first freshman year. Like we talked about the eviction moratorium expiring. Well, I made a decision that this was about to expire. Congress was about to adjourn, and the only people that could do something about extending the moratorium, a moratorium that was to keep 11 million people from being at risk for evictions. The only folks that could do something about it was Congress, the CDC, and the president. Well, I decided to stay out there on those steps. I decided, hey, I don't even have my stuff that I have in St. Louis that I protest with. I don't have anything. But you know what? I'm just going to put my body right here. And we stayed. And then after those 4 days and 4 nights and 5 days, we won. So the thing is, had I not been there, 11 million people would have actually been at risk. Let me tell you, that was also the largest month of emergency rental assistance disbursement since the pandemic had begun. So we were able to make sure people stayed in their homes and that money started to flow. Um, uh, and so that affected people all across the country. I have people across the country still to this day telling me not only were they able to stay in their homes, they were able to keep their jobs, or they were able to have a safe place for their kids. So this affects the entire country, as well as when we just look at the ceasefire now resolution. That ceasefire now resolution is for peace and safety and humanity and dignity and liberation for people not in this country, but because it is for people in Gaza, when we're talking about Palestine, because we're speaking about another country, that reverberates right here in this country. What we're talking about is having the safety of our Palestinian, Arab, and Muslim community members right here, as people are overlooking the fact that there is a real thing called anti-Palestinian hate. What I'm saying is that tax dollars are tax dollars that are being used to fund the bombs that are being used to kill innocent people, and people being used to kill people, babies and daddies and grandmas. That those bombs, that money should be circulating right in our own communities. And so it makes a difference what that vote is. I get to vote on that, and it affects the entire country. So we need people that are able to stand up and to speak out. The thing is this: people make this, they get upset. Oh, well, you voted against Biden on this particular thing. You didn't vote with the Democrats. Let me say this: we got to do better as Democrats on the bills that we write. Because the thing is this: if it works for my community, if it works for the people, if the people who need help the most are prioritized in this legislation, and then everybody that they don't need as much help, they get to benefit too. But when we start up here and we hope something trickles down to the rest of the people, that doesn't work. So I'm going to either make an amendment or I'm going to vote against it. That's why it matters, because these votes, they touch the entire country. And if I move, let me say this: it's not just about Cory Bush herself won't be in that seat anymore. It is about the values that we bring to the table. It's about movement no longer being at the table. It is about how they will switch me out for a fake progressive and put someone there who will then do the opposite of the work that we have been working on for so many years. We've made huge strides in 10 years. That person will be in a position they called him the empty vessel. He will be in the position to then turn all of those things back around. And let me say this too. So Mo, Project 2025 is real. Project 2025, 900 pages of crap. 900 pages of what they want to do to harm our communities. If we don't have people that are in these seats that are willing to speak up, you can't take Donald Trump donor money and then want to fight Donald Trump. It doesn't work like that. They are giving you money. They're funding. They are funding these folks because they're going to have to pay the piper at some point. So you're going to have to vote my way when I call on you to vote my way. The thing is this: none of them can call on me to vote their way. None of them. Only people that can hold me accountable are the people that vote for me, and the people that are our crew. Those are the people that hold me accountable, and that's who I listen to.
You heard it. There is a difference between people who use the language of our community and use the language of the movement and claim to be progressives. That word gets bandied around all over the place. And people who could show and prove through a history of struggle that they mean it, through a history of sacrifice that they mean it, and through a history of being independent that they could stand on it. And that, my friends, is Congresswoman Cori Bush. Thank you so much, Congresswoman Bush. I know you represent the folks of your district, but you represent all of us. You represent all of us when you stand there and speak through truth to power. We are in deep gratitude for your work, and we are flanking you. And it is a we, right? You are not alone. It is a we that will flank you and ensure your victory. And we have a lot of work to do. And we will do that work between now and Election Day. And now I want to pass it back to Ashley to give us the final word. Thank you, my sister. Thank you for your struggle. Thank you for your sacrifice. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your testimony. Thank you for your ministry. Thank you for your healing. We see you. We appreciate you. We are standing 10 toes with you towards victory.
I love
My
you all.
people, my people, my people, can we let her know that Cori Bush is not alone? That the people of St. Louis are not alone? The people of Missouri are not alone? That we will show up and show out in support and in defense of Cori Bush. My heart is full. And if you too feel full because of the words of Emily and Kayla, Maurice, and Cori, I want you to put some love in the chat. Can you feel how powerful it is to have people like Cori Bush in Congress holding it down for us, for our people, for our movements? We need to do everything we can to protect Representative Bush from these AIPAC funded attacks. We got us, right? Who got us? We got us. So if you haven't already, we got to text mass call to 30403, because when you do, you will be plugged into a community of like-minded people from all over the country who are doing the work to protect people like Congresswoman Bush, to spend more time, more energy, more of our collective energy sending folks like her to Congress so that we can continue to grow our power to move a governing agenda. And we know that when we try to do this, people in power are going to come after us. They're going to come after Cori. So this is why we need to stick together. So again, text mass call to 30403 so that you can join us and be a part of that power, so that you can spread the word to others about what we are doing here. And maybe you're like, Ash, listen, you done asked us to text mass call to 30403 10,000 times. I've already texted. Well, then I'm going to ask you to get on social media or open up your group chats with your friends, your family, your comrades, and I want you to tell them to text max call to 30403. Mobilize and organize your own folks to join us for the next call and to fight for Congresswoman Bush to stay in the people's seat on all of our behalfs. So with that, comrades, we have kept you over time, and this time together has been beautiful. Can you feel how powerful we could be together? Let's remember, MAGA isn't powerful in trying to force minority rule down our throats because we're weak and prone to losing. They are desperately attempting to consolidate their wealth and power because we're powerful. And we are doing and can do the work of building the power of the majority. Our movement ancestors face their own challenges and they put in the work to get us here. And now we're called to lead like lives depend on it right now, because they do. It certainly ain't always easy. It's not been and it won't be. Now is a particularly challenging time, and all of the feelings and contradictions that you're holding and feeling are absolutely real. We will make mistakes, but just like on a protest march or on a picket line, there is power in not doing the work of the opposition for them and having the bold audacity to believe that we can win and the determination to make it so. Now is the time to make the commitment to take our faithful next moves together. So remember, our next call is August 14th at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Mountain, and 5 p.m. Pacific. We will see you then. Good night, good people. Good night, good people. We love you. We love you. Cori, we love you. We will see y'all next time. Be well.